Uh, Hello. Well, this is the official start. It's 4 and 4, and we have an exciting seminar on teaching architecture online. And I'm a kind of a chairman, but I'm really the link between Alessandro and KROPF and my idea to kind of gather all the morphologists online. So we had a meeting like 2-3 weeks ago with the morphologists, and then Alessandro had an idea to kind of join everyone together. And we have a very exciting, I would say, a series of presentation from architecture to urban design planning to pure design. Now, Elias will talk about pure design, and well, I know most of the people here, so I'll just first I will say that Teresa, she could not make it because she went to the hospital, and she just emailed. So we will have a, but she said, so she said, well, she did not say wrote anything, but she just said she cannot. So, but we hope she's okay and she can join the next seminar with this time. So well, I will be very formal, as Alessandro said, and I'll start with KARL KROPF and make an introduction. And KARL KROPF is, I would say, he is the superstar of urban morphology. He just, can I say, Carl, that a good, he is very much involved with ISUF, and he has written recently a book of, about urban morphology and application for urban design. So he is from, he is a senior lecturer at Oxford Brookes, but his specialty, I mean, my favorite part of his research is on morphological structure and how different schools, how to kind of converge the knowledge from different schools into one generic kind of urban morphological flow that urban designers can use as kind of a background for design. And I have my daughter around me jumping, so if you get some strange sounds and you will. So I will just invite Carl to start, and then I'm gonna.
Wait a minute. We have to do some seminar introduction before we do this. So before we introduce the individual lectures, we have the introduction of the seminar and the introduction of yourself. You didn't listen.
Okay.
So welcome everyone, and we decided to organize this seminar because every one of us is struggling, I imagine, in different parts of the world on how to teach architecture online, which is not the same as teaching biology or nuclear physics. There's a different component to it, which is, you know, the drawings, the visual part of the teaching, which is something we are not used to handle online. And the success of this initiative was amazing. So we're going to have a second seminar entitled Teaching Architecture Online, call on something else. We're going to find out. And we already have 6 people that are candidates to do their presentation. We do apologize for our friends in the world down under in Australia and China, because the timing of this presentation with the Stockholm time does not allow them to join. Therefore, we're going to have a second one, which is going to be based in Australia at Brookes University, most probably, and it's going to be timed accordingly. But if anyone of you would like to share his own experience in teaching online architecture, and let us know so we can schedule you within the next presentation. Maybe not everyone knows that in 1665, the University of Cambridge was closed, was locked down for the Black Plague. And at that time, Isaac Newton, which was a lecturer in that university, continued his work from home. And there he created the formula for the gravitational law. So like him, we will continue to learn and to teach and to research. A few words, just one minute for me to introduce the ISUF, International Seminar on Urban Form, which is the International Organization of Urban Form for researchers and practitioners. It was started in 1994, collecting morphologists from around the world. It is organizing conferences and publishing the journal Urban Morphology. the Urban Morphology Journal is for you available on the same website of, sorry, you're not seeing my screen. I beg your pardon. Somebody should have warned me of this. You're not seeing my screen. Okay, now you see my screen. I'm not going to start again, but so we are going to publish all the materials related to the seminar on the website of the laboratory drum, that right there. So you're going to find the link for the video and further materials over there. So the quote here is for Isaac Newton, and in 1616, there you go, 1665, University of Cambridge lockdown. And that is the moment and the time when the laws of gravitation were found. So, you know, in this time of difficulties, we're going to continue to learn, teach, and research, just like him. There you go. International Seminar at Urban Forum, urbanforum.org. And this organization is publishing the journal Urban Morphology, which is a science, Web of Science listed journal, Art and Humanities Citation Index journal, which is available on the link there below, Journal Online. The same organization is organizing every year an international conference, and this year it will take place, virtually take place in Salt Lake City, Utah. It will be a virtual conference. And next year it will be hopefully physically in Scotland, in Glasgow. Now, who is TODOR STOJANOVSKI? I would like to introduce him. He's an architect and a PhD, holds a PhD in urban regional studies. He is currently a postdoc at ESAL, Embodied Social Agents Lab, and CST, Division of Computational Science and Technology at the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. And we are now, everyone is in Stockholm, following the Stockholm time. He is kindly in KTH-Royal Institute of Technology, kindly hosting all this conference on the Zoom platform they hold there. He is researching on urban forms, sustainable mobility, and digitizing urban design practices. He is researching about urban morphology, urban space, environmental psychology, transit-oriented development, traffic planning, information technology and urbanism, geographic, GIS, building, information modeling, and gaming. So now I can hand it over to TODOR.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was a nice introduction. Sorry for me starting this very, rushing. I always rush. I'm not very formal. I just like to talk and yes.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
I know. And then Alessandro is always kind of putting me to place. So well, one more time, introduction to KARL KROPF. So as I was reading their chit chats on. They had an ESUF. I think they have an ESUF mailing list, and then I thought, like, well, we can. And I was talking with Ivor Samuels and Paul Sanders. We were writing a piece on digitizing urban design practice, and we have like an online gathering of morphologists. And when Alessandro saw this, he said, we're going to need to organize this big seminar. And KARL KROPF, he is really Alessandro is the engine, but KARL KROPF is the big support behind this. And as I said, I would rank him as a superstar in urban morphology research and writing these lovely books and promoting urban morphology and urban design. I said senior lecturer at Brookes University, fantastic work on morphological structure and trying to combine all this cool and different experience. And should I say anything else, Carl, or you just start your presentation? Lovely having you here.
unmute. Thank you, Todor. A very full introduction, and thank you, Alessandro, for your introduction, and really both of you for organizing everything. What I have to say is really kind of pragmatic, practical, and quick, and so I hope it's of some use. And I suspect that as we've all been kind of confronted with these issues over the last few weeks, that some of what I have to say, you'll probably go, oh, well, I've worked that out now because I've had to. So I'm anticipating that a lot of you will kind of see this as being fairly straightforward. But I wanted to give it a bit of structure. So I've got a few slides, and then what I was going to do is just put up some student work and scribble, basically, just to demonstrate, so if you don't already know. So I want to talk about the tools within Zoom, and then talk about using them both for individual tutorials and then group workshops and tutorials, because they work quite differently. And just to say that this is really a joint effort on the part of everyone at Oxford Brookes working in the urban design program. So that includes the head of the program, Regina Lim, John Cooper, Laura Nova Azevedo, Alan Reeve, and myself, the team. And Regina and John have been quite instrumental in putting together some of the ways that we've been doing things. So to say this isn't rocket science, you'll have started to work it out, but the key tools that we found that are useful are the record, so what we're doing now, so that there's a record of it. And if you kind of nose around in the settings, you should be able to find that you can, if you initiate the Zoom session, you can set it to automatically record. So you just let it do it, and you can either record it to the cloud or locally. The mute, I think everyone's now kind of got the etiquette of Zoom, which is if you're not speaking, put your mute on so your children don't interrupt, or the dog or the cat. So that's pretty straightforward. The chat is quite useful. And one of the things we do, as I'll say later, is that particularly in groups, it's good to have two tutors, so that one tutor can monitor the chat, so students can ask questions on the chat, and then the other tutor is say working with some of the work that's being looked at specifically. The share screen, obviously, we're just doing it, and the annotate tools, which I'll look at a bit. But I think that those things are should be fairly straightforward. But what we found is quite important is how we organize the sessions. And so this kind of goes through the process that we do for individual tutorials. So essentially, we have the design project. So there'll be a brief that's in the module handbook, so they know what to do. Obviously, in this case, we've started on site and have then had to do the tutorial work at a distance. Obviously, we need to start looking at how specifically we might run a session to to introduce the design project. So they have a brief. Then when it comes to, so they'll have done some work, and what we do is to timetable 30-minute tutorial sessions for each student. So that's something we as the tutors do and say, this is when you've got to be around. And so we've set up a spreadsheet. We use Moodle for all the main communications about the module. And so each one of them has a slot. But what we then do is say the student has to have their own Zoom account, and they're the ones who set up the invitation. So they invite us to their session. That allows them to record it, and it also gives them the responsibility to sort it out. And they, if some is as the case, sometimes they don't show up, that's their thing. Ideally, we like them to let us know so we're not sitting around waiting for them. But if we don't get the invitation far enough in advance, then we do something else. So that's up to them. So it's important. I mean, bearing in mind, these are postgrad students. So this is the MA in urban design. So the student then records the session. They share their screen of the work that they've done, and we discuss and annotate the work. So what I'll do is stop sharing this screen, unless I can do that. Well, let me know. Has that changed the screen at all? Or do I need to stop the share and start again? I'm going to share another screen.
You have to stop sharing and start over. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's this is an undergrad student's work, but nonetheless. So if you haven't already started using them, there are a number of annotation tools. So you go up to the top, hit the menu bar should come down, and you use annotations, and there's a bar. I tend to use the draw. So when the student has put that up, they then explain it, and then we can say, well, okay, I can then use that tool just with my mouse to say, well, do those plots actually work? And then, or say, okay, then I can change the color and say, well, is there going to be any buffer here? So I can start, doing lots of annotations. So there's the draw tool, then there are arrows. So then I can say, well, okay, are there vistas coming down? And so there are a number of things that we can do. And so we use those back and forth so they can then draw as well. And, as I say, it's not rocket science, but those are the two main tools, the draw tools that are useful. And then, you can get different widths as well. So you can't, it's relatively flexible. But the main thing is that you're interacting with the student and doing, in a sense, we can do what we do on the table. So I would be sketching. Now, another thing that would be ideal, which I haven't done yet, which probably will do shortly, is to get a tablet. So just a Wacom tablet, and then you can draw more easily than with a mouse. So that as I say, it's all fairly straightforward. Once the thing is with the Zoom annotations is they're on the screen on top of it. So if I zoom out, the annotations stay the same. So you can't, there's a clear button, or you can just Control Z to go backwards and get rid of them. So once you've done it one or two times, it should become fairly easy. There is an eraser. It actually is quite slow, and a clear button. So the thing you can do is, once you have a Zoom account, you can start your own meeting and just test it out. So put a drawing up and see how you scribble and see how you get used to it. So as I say, it's not rocket science, but is fairly straightforward. So the other thing that we have been doing, and this is quite interesting, is because Zoom has allowed this to happen more easily. Normally, we try to get to the tutorial session someone from professional practice, either someone from an urban design office or someone from a local authority, a planner, urban designer, who's on the regulatory side. That can be difficult because if they're coming in, they have to travel in and they spend a day, and they don't always have the time to do that. So what we do is the same process of setting out a very clear timetable. You say, you assign the student a mentor, and they get one of each. And we, obviously we've kind of talked to the mentors in advance and said, are you willing to do this? Yes. How much time do you have? So maybe they have 3 half-hour sessions, so an hour and a half of their time in a week. If it's for example. So again, we timetable the 30-minute tutorial sessions. Again, it's up to the student to get that invitation, and they go through the same process. And the thing that I've found, just as kind of anecdotally, is the students are much more focused in this context than they often can be when we're in a studio. So in the studio, there's lots of noise going on, there are other people hanging around, and it can be quite distracting. Whereas up till now, the students have been very focused and attentive and grateful for the interaction. Now that could be the context, which is they haven't got much interaction. But anyway, so they will get at least one tutorial from us, or two. They get one from a planner and one from a designer. Then again, so that they do the same process. So that's for individuals. And the other thing is we just say, well, if you want another session, just let us know. So we, voluntarily say that's something you can do. Now for for group work, and we though a number of people in the university don't like us doing group work for various reasons, it's not very understandable, but anyway, we give them a group task as well as individual design work. So they do, we do this because urban design is interdisciplinary and you need to know how to work in a group. And so we get them to do work in a group. So we assign the workshop task. Then what we've done is to issue the instructions for the workshop with a Zoom lecture. So I will set up a Zoom session of one, record myself with the presentation, and they then give that to them as a video. And in this one case, we had someone else, an outside person with expertise in Hong Kong, talk about the Hong Kong shop house and its development. So they did a morphological analysis of Hong Kong, or a bit of it. So we issue that. They go off and we assign the groups. They have the specific groups. Now, what interesting is just what's emerged is, and this is what we learned from them, is that we asked them, how did you do it? Well, they would coordinate a group session themselves. Often, most of them are on WhatsApp, and so we have a WhatsApp group for the whole of the year. But they arrange that. They have that group session, so they are uploading drawings, talking through it. They go then and undertake separate tasks, share those on a G drive, and then have a coordinating session to put it all together and to finish off the design. Then when we have a feedback session, a tutor sets that one up. And so we say, here's at this time, we assign them a time to present. We record the session. Then the group shares its screen. And then the tutors, again, are using Annotate to point out issues. And we had, in this case, we had the three of us. So there were Rahina and I, and Roland Wong, who's from Hong Kong, is providing input. So we have the groups who share their screen, who discuss and annotate. As I say, those not speaking use mute, like we're all doing now. We have questions, and one of us will monitor the questions and throw that back out. and then ideally one tutor will lead the discussion, but we generally have a group discussion. And in terms of the experience of doing it, I found that it's still been very positive. The students are, again, attentive and want the input, and they, I don't think, find it difficult, and are comfortable doing it. So that's what I have to say. So I hope it's of some use. As I say, very practical. I'm hoping that a lot of you already know it, but it may be just helpful to have it reinforced. So happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Well, thank you, Karl. Anyone has questions? Want to say something?
They can write on the chat.
Yeah, no one. Yeah, there is a possibility to write questions on the chat, but yes, anyone spontaneous question?
TODOR, let's
I
take
have a question.
discussion at the end, not now. Let's take all the discussion
one
at
quick
the end.
question will be good.
Yeah, then let's go to the next one.
Well, I just have a question because I participated in a urban design review session yesterday. And is there a way for the visiting critics to also draw on the drawings on the PowerPoint presentation that the
students anyone should be able to draw on it.
Okay.
So I haven't looked at the details of whether you need permission to give permission, but certainly when we had the session with the three of us, all three of us were able to mark on the drawing.
Okay.
Sorry, I should kindly remind you that we're going to take the questions in the chat box, and I'm going to collect those questions and ask in the end of the seminar. So if that's possible from now on, if you could write your questions in the chat to share it with everyone, and I'll take count of them.
Well, it's always good to have one question, but let's go to the next presentation. So the next presentation is the University of Ferrara, Department of Architecture, and I think it's Luca who will present, isn't it? Not Marcello. Yes.
Yes. Marcello is in another meeting now at the same time, so he's moderating this meeting. I think he will listen our discussion probably, but at the moment is not able to take part. Probably later.
Well, I will just say because we met like a few days ago, and Luca works with digitalization of architecture and kind of using different digital tools to kind of support the teaching process. Yes, so you can. Is there? I don't have here the whole biography, but you're professor at University of Ferrara, and
yes, if you want, I can say something during at the beginning.
I apologize.
Of the presentation.
Sorry, I'm going to make the presentation. No. I'm sorry. Okay, 1 second. It's coming. There you go. So Luca Rossato is a research fellow at the Department of Architecture of University of Ferrara. Wait, I can even share my screen. That's incredible. Sorry for this, this complication here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and show him. There you go. Okay, Luca Rossato is, so this presentation has two names. One is Professor Marcello Balzani, who is a professor at the Department of Architecture of University of Ferrara. And the presenter is Luca Rossato, who is a research fellow at the Department of Architecture of University of Ferrara. Architect and researcher in the field ICAR 17, which in Italian means survey, at the Department of Architecture of University of Ferrara. His areas of investigation are both the vernacular and modern architecture, documentation, representation, and enhancement. In these fields, he was coordinator project for the DAPREM Center activities in India and in Brazil, contract professor at the University of Ferrara. He was visiting professor at the Pontificia Universidade Católica do Paraná, Brazil, at CEPT University, Ahmedabad, India, and Mackenzie University in São Paulo, Brazil, and also at the Burgundy School of Business in Dijon, in France. He's been member of the editorial staff of Paesaggio Urbano, and author and co-author of more than 130 publications. He is a member of ICOMOS and of the Italian Union of Drawing. So please apologize for us for this guidance and the, not putting your picture in the booklet. We might have the time to do that later. Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandro, for the introduction. No problem at all for me. I keep the time, so okay. I share my screen. Can you see the slides? Yes, can you see them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So today I'm going to present our approach in teaching architecture inside a point cloud. I work for the Apron Center, which is developing 3D geometric survey, modeling, and representation technique since 1997. I joined the group in 2008. My expertises are the digital documentation of vernacular and modernist architecture with a specific focus on the South American architecture and Asian vernacular heritage. I teach at the university with Professor Marcello Balzani. Our course is called Architectural Documentation. It's part of the second semester of the first year of a master degree in architecture, 5 years long. So we deal with a very young students at the first year of their university path. The teaching objectives for us are always the acquisition of theoretical and procedural aspects related to the documentation, specifically direct survey and architectural representation. So the activity is mainly organized, split in two modules: architectural survey module, taught by Marcello Balzani, and representation techniques module, for which I am the professor in charge. Beside the traditional learning of teaching of survey and documentation, we since this year we planned drops of knowledge. They are meeting with professionals and colleagues in order to give to the students some stimulus about the virtual tour, photos of architectures, archaeological survey by drone, again, color documentation, survey of vernacular buildings, and information about the current process from point cloud to BIM. I have prepared this diagram to explain our methodology in these difficult times. You can read it vertically. I have divided it in 4 areas. The first one from the left describes the main challenges, and then the mitigation that we faced, the mitigation activities that we planned, and then the learning verification process that we started to check the learning level of the students from this online teaching activity, and then the main result of our work with the students. I'm going to go through the diagram horizontally by rows, starting with the most obvious. So we are actually recording lessons and video tutorials for the students. We use the OBS Studio software, an open source project, and we upload the contents on the Google Drive platform of the course. We check this process by Google Forms that we send to the students in order to understand if they can answer some questions and if they are correctly understanding and learning our instructions. The feedback of this was quite good because the students actually are benefiting from the e-learning as it can provide opportunity for them to work at their own pace. Also, for students with learning difficulties, this methodology is working quite well. I show you just few input about this. The interface of the OBS Studio software, it's open. So also the students can download it and send us videos related to their difficulties in approaching the methodology of direct survey and also the software that we use. The streaming lessons are recorded and then uploaded also on the platform. And this is the Google Drive of the course, where there is a section of videos and slides in PDF, and also a folder for each student where they can store the exercise we ask, and then we can access the folder and check the quality of the production of the students. This is one of the forms that we send to them to also check the learning level for each student. Following the second row, the challenge is that student cannot access the computer lab of the department. This could be quite tough for a course like this one, where when we use a big database recorded in with a 3D laser scanner, acquired by laser scanner. The last year we had the chance to have the software Cyclone on the computer lab, so the students have access to the this expensive actually software thanks to the computer facilities lab. This year we decided to switch for an open source again software, Cloud Compare, which works quite well for the managing of 3D point clouds. At the same time, we use AutoCAD 2020 with the students completely free license, the academic license. This brought us to give some exercises to the students. From these exercises, they can learn step by step, and these exercises are also evaluated by us, and the evaluation is part of the final mark. In terms of outputs, I can say that the students are actually using the new skills to manage a point cloud, which is, in my opinion, a good achievement for a very young students, 19 years old student of architecture, and they are elaborating CAD drawing from these images saved from the point cloud software, Cloud Compare. Again, some images of the process. So this is the interface of Cloud Compare with some video tutorial that we offer to the students. Again, AutoCAD video tutorial. The exercises that are then evaluated by us with some criteria and the final mark between 0 and 5. I go quickly to the third road. The problem is that the students cannot leave their own house. As you are aware, they are still at home. So for a course like this one, where they should learn how to direct survey building and architecture, this was the main challenge. So as a mitigation activities, we planned, in one hand, to ask the students to produce some documentation material from their own houses. So actually they are sketching, they are measuring their houses, they are taking pictures, graphic elaboration, and they are learning by doing, how to document, how to survey an architectural space, a simple architectural space, because they obviously live in average houses, average quality houses, not in very old and important buildings. But this is the base to understand the methodology. Then, through the point cloud we provided them, they are completely inside very important architectural context, which is part of our database. As a Diaphragm Center, we have many 3D databases on architectural complexes. So every year, since last year, we started to select some complexes and divided in small point cloud. We give to the students this portion, and they are completely inside this 3D environment, studying the finest architectural features. The verification process in this case is based on hand drawing, digital elaboration, and point cloud outputs that we can evaluate and the student can upload on the cloud of the course. And again, these materials are based on the houses of the students and on historic places we selected. Again, we are quite happy about the result because the student use the house as a place for understanding methodology and survey processes. And then they have to apply it on a point cloud, theoretically, obviously, on a point cloud environment of historic building. You can see here the preliminary sketches of the students' houses. Again, they have to study the morphology, and then they start to measure the space and also the architectural features. As you can see, we are talking about very simple places, but at the same time, they are involved in the architectural survey of more important architectures, thanks to the point cloud navigation. These are some elaboration from the students' work. So actually they understand how to cut a section horizontally and vertically, how to study a floor detail or ceiling decoration, etc. At the same time, they are applying the extra content that we offer them, as I told you, the doc meeting, now online meeting, unfortunately, not in the classroom anymore. So for example, they are surveying colors of their houses with the methodology we suggested them. They are realizing virtual tour through the houses, and they upload it on this platform, the Thesis platform, which works quite well, a platform where we can check the work and upgrade also, let them upgrade the work with more material, for example, PDF plan of the same houses with link to the 360 pictures that are taken with Google Street app by their mobile. I have just 3 minutes, so I focus your attention to the fourth row. The students need a weekly discussion with the professor. For us, in this kind of courses, this is the most tricky lack. Actually, we are facing, we miss a lot the discussion with the students. So we try to mitigate this through the Google Meet discussion in order to have the chance to share the screen, and the students also are sharing the screen and the drawings for a single tutorial. During the review, we ask also the PDF file, and we send the PDF back to the students with some annotation for let them understand the major mistakes. As a main result, this weekly review process that will last until the end of the semester is going to give them inputs on representation, solution, survey methodology that are also recorded at the end of each tutorial session and put online in the Google Drive of the course. You can see here the streaming of tutorial of a group of 3 students on AutoCAD issues. Some general issues are faced with the streaming of general tutorial with all the students, the 70 students of the course. This is the drawing checking PDF file when we can put note on the problem we identified on the drawing. And then to conclude, I want to show you some outputs that are from the last year, but I hope to have the same quality this year as well. So actually you see they work on the point cloud and then they redraw the building, trying to act as they were there. So the question is, if the students have had the chance to survey the place, how they would have measured it. The answer is that they are involved in the deep in the environment, and they are representing the methodology they would have used on place if they have had the chance to be on place. Again, trilateration of staircase. Again, they have to select the methodology and represent the space. So at the same time, it's a representation issue and also a methodological approach for the direct survey of the space. You see again here some section, AutoCAD section from the point cloud elaboration. Here they are trying to identify the level, for example, of the survey by the which they can identify the dimensions of each architectural feature. Again, some overlapping.
Remind you that your time is almost over.
Yeah, okay, I'm the last slide. So actually I'm finished. These are some details they are elaborating, and some tridimensional views they are working on. That's it. Many thanks for your attention. Sorry for this extra minute I have taken. And if you have any questions, you can
yes.
write.
Well, we prepare. Maybe if someone has a quick question, we can.
Sure.
We can. Anyone? No. Okay. Then we go to very quickly to Lamberto. I'm going to be very official and read. Lamberto is an associate professor in architectural urban design at the Department of Architecture in the University of Bologna, and he's devoted to research and project concerning architecture in the city, and he's a co-director of the series TECA, Theory of the Architectural Composition, and he is very much focused on the work on John Hayduck and Aldo Rossi. And he's author of numerical publication, including lots of books in Italian. Maybe Lamberto, can you help me? There more continuation of Aldo Rossi tradition, yes? Lamberto?
I didn't open the microphone. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, and the floor is yours, so you can open your presentation and start.
Yeah. Okay. I share the screen.
Yes.
Okay, you can see my screen. Yeah.
Yes, works
Okay.
great.
I want to present this a European Commission Erasmus Plus Strategic Partnership for Higher Education program that I coordinate. The title of my intervention is ArchéA, a blended circular teaching learning program. ArchéA, so it is a bit different because this program is not only virtual, but it mixes physical and virtual mobility. ArchéA is an acronym. It means Architectural European Medium-Sized City Arrangement, and involves a partnership of 5 universities, all the universities located in medium-sized European cities: Cesena, Parma, Gliwice in Poland, Aachen in Germany, Rouen in Normandy. The focus of the program is the open space of the city, but today I will speak about the focus of this webinar, teaching architecture online, tools and strategies. Actually, apart this time of coronavirus, the ArchéA project was born from a 2017 European agenda, which already gives some indications regarding the introduction of innovative elements in higher education. It is the renewed European Union agenda for higher education. Innovation concerns both the structure of the program and the introduction of some technological tools, but all of this in the specific field of architecture, teaching, learning, and especially in the field of urban design. The structure of the program. The structure of the program starts from the very specific nature of the discipline, which already contains a theoretical component and a praxis related to the techne. Architecture is the combination of arche and techne. Techne intended both as a know-how and a technological praxis. So the program is like double, is blended because it mixes virtual mobility and physical mobility, and then it mixes theory and praxis, arche and techne. It's a sort of dialectical position, and we tried to show this dialectical position in the structure of the program too. On the one side, the world of theory, and then the other side, the world of practice. On the one side, science, art, thought and form, urban study theory, and architectural design workshops, experimental workshop about a specific city, about a specific study area. So this dichotomy is more specific. On the one side is the urban theory, and on the other, architectural design workshop. The architectural design workshop assumes the form of intensive program for learners, and it means on a real specific architectural workshop with a real physical mobility. And the other side is the urban study theory. It is 5 e-learning paths, open education resources, and MOOC. You know, MOOC is massive open online courses. The practical part is concentrated about the study of 2 cities, specifically Bologna and Aachen. The theoretical part is online. This part is a program that follows other indication of many documents of the European Union. The European Union insists a lot on the distance learning, not just for the problem of the coronavirus, but to respond to problems such as the lifelong learning and the open education and the social inclusiveness. The practical part of this blended program concerns the 2 international architectural design workshops. In this case, the Erasmus Plus program supports the physical mobility. Actually, 30 students and 10 teachers from 4 countries took part in the architectural design workshop on a real study area in Bologna, organized in Cesena by me by my school, and was Alessandro present as visiting critics. Thank you, Alessandro. Regardless of the outbreak of this pandemic, the program already envisaged experimenting with remote design practices during the face-to-face architecture workshop. Actually, through the use of a graphic tablet and a digital pen, such as we use this model of Wacom, 32-inch Wacom, and of course a screen sharing platform software, not Zoom but Teams, but the concept is the same of the Professor Kropf before. So with the Teams and this electronic table, we were able to discuss graphically with a teacher located in another city. So we had a discussion between students during the architectural workshop and a teacher located in another city, in another university. After the lockdown, after the coronavirus, we used this practice, of course, normally for our design workshop of the University of Architecture in Cesena. So it's a sort of case. I want to explain why in my title I have written circular, blended circular teaching learning program. The cycle is one that is established between theory and design, and in which it is difficult to say which one comes first. It's like a circle. Or later, the theory comes first, but then the architectural design reacts retroactively to the theory. So it's like a cycle. And redrawing in the middle of the cycle, we did redrawing of the city of Bologna and of the city of Aachen. Redrawing play a fundamental role in this circle. It is a sort of medium term. Le Corbusier called it language of description. So we had a sort of language of description in the middle between the theory online and the practical activity during the architectural design workshop. So the experimentation, the praxis react to the theory, and the theory is changing. So this circular teaching path is theory, redrawing of Bologna in our case, and a specific design, a specific study area of Bologna. The ArchéA program foresees 2 cycles. One about the city of Bologna, and the same cycle, the same path, with of course other students, with of course other teachers. In this year, in November of this year, about the city of Aachen. So the 2 cities are Bologna and Aachen. I want to say something just about the topic of the program. The topic is the city, is the European medium-sized city, but specifically is the open space of the European medium-sized city. The main idea is that the open space of the European medium-sized city is recognized as a psychological, sociological, and aesthetic high-quality space. For this reason, it can be assumed as a resource to conserve and develop. So the question is, we didn't assume abstract models of open space quality evaluation, but we assume concrete models. And so the redrawing is a way to study this specific concrete model of high quality open space of the city. Of course, it is a formal, syncretic, reductionistic approach. It's not a complex approach, maybe, but formal approach. The program foresees 5 intellectual outputs. So the redrawing, I have spoken about this redrawing of the open space. The redrawing are made by all the partners with the same frame, with the same scale, at the same scale. So it is very useful to confront, to compare different approach, because this partnership is not really, is just very different approach. It's not a family partnership, but it is a partnership composed by very different approach. So the second one is intellectual output is the MOOC, and then we have 9 transnational project meetings in all the cities. We have 7 multiplier events. We did 4 of them in Aachen, in Gliwice, in Poland, in French. One short-term joint staff training. It was really useful because now we can use the platform Zoom. We can use Teams, and we start to be used. But at the beginning, we knew absolutely nothing, and so this short-term joint staff training is an activity of the program to teach to the staff how to use digital tools and sharing, screen sharing platform, and so. And though we have 2 intensive programs for higher education, the 2 architectural design workshop. And then if we have more time, I don't know how many time.
3 minutes left.
2 minutes? Yeah.
3. You still have 3 minutes.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
I want to show just briefly the website. I have to stop the share and then again, yeah? Maybe. Allora.
Yes.
Okay. And now. Sharing. Okay, do you see? Do you see my screen or not?
No, not
No.
now.
No.
Okay, share.
Okay, we can see now.
Okay, this is the website. the website you can see the same structure, because we have the e-learning on the one side, and on the other side we have the mobility. The mobility is about the architectural workshop. So if you go to the site, you can see the results, the study, the redrawing, and the result of the workshop. We did some models, all of the same area, all of the same frame. This is an area in Bologna, and so we work about this big area of the X-marked area, and we compare 5 very different approaches. This is the model of one project. This is a total different approach. This is a Poland approach. This is Parma and French. But more interesting is that this facing the project is made through the redrawing, and you can see the redrawing in another part of the site because it is open educational resource. We have the redrawing of the open space with 5 different approaches. The approach of University of Cesena Bologna is a monumental structural approach. The approach of Aachen is a phenomenological approach to mapping the space of the city, or the functionalist approach of the University of Poland, and this idea to compact, to densification the city, or the tradition of the French tradition of architecture is about the natural space.
So we have to, we run out of time, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
But it was fantastic to kind of bring a little bit theory in the debate, and also kind of see a different perspective of more collaborative approach through different countries who work on us, for example, on the same site. And it's very interesting, maybe for later. We have, if anyone has questions, but I can kind of jump a few topics about different theories, need different representation and different technological, so that might be interesting for later discussion. But anyone has an immediate question that wants to ask Lamberto, or should I read the next speaker, which is Alessandro? No one? Okay, I'm just gonna present Alessandro. So I met Alessandro 5 years ago in Rome.
Professor,
there's a question.
Okay. No, I just wanted him to stop sharing the screen. That's fine. Okay.
Okay. Well, I met Alessandro 5 years ago in Rome, and he was when I went to ISUF, and he did the same thing like now, like saying me, don't talk too much, read your things, and so it's always brilliant to when you combine the energy of Alessandro and the Italian passion to do architecture and the mastery. So I will just be very official now. And Alessandro, he's a alma mater from bachelor to PhD at Sapienza in Rome, and he's been doing some practice with Sartoga Architetti Associati for the new Italian embassy in Washington, and Church of Jesus Holy Face in Rome. And he likes history very much, and how architecture links to history, and he likes to talk a lot and shows lots of images, particularly long time history and focusing. He's currently leading the dynamic research on urban morphology at Özyeğin University. You need to.
Özyeğin
University in Istanbul, and he's responsible for this seminar. So, Alessandro, you have the floor, or you have the screen.
Okay, thank you very much, TODOR. Özyeğin. So the G is not pronounced; it's mute G, let's say. Okay. Ageometritos medes esito. Those who ignore geometry shall not enter. So was written on the entrance of the Academia, the first school of philosophy of the West, founded by Plato near Athens. And now some people believe that the teaching of architecture should not be technical, should not include geometry, and they claim, those people, that they are philosophers. I don't know what is the foundation of that assumption. Our foundation is that of the Academia, based on geometry. Now, what is the research question about this presentation is, which are the digital tools and the online procedures capable of replacing the traditional design review, what we were doing beforehand, before the coronavirus, the review, the architectural review. But now we have to do it online. So what is a review? Okay, we gave a definition here: one or more architects drawing on paper to correct the project, facing the author of the project, in this case a student, but it could be a professional, and also surrounded by other students, which are all of them interact by speaking, mimicking, modeling in space, and eventually drawing, mostly drawing. But what is the online review instead? It is sort of this collective synchronous discussion and assessment of projects drawn, spoken, and spatially modeled. We do spatial modeling with a feedback which is saved into a file. So within these, definitions and this research question, let's see what we have done. But first of all, within the debate between formal and informal, I would like to say that, university is founded in the Middle Ages and it has its own traditions. Formal communication. A number of people believe, being revolutionary, that the informal communications should substitute the formal one, and so we can have the two and have a balance. But I believe in formal communication within the university, even though I believe in opposing this idea. But the interaction is the key word, in my opinion, in teaching. And you can see the interaction of Plato teaching philosophy to Socrates in the before mentioned Academia, or the interaction of Frank Lloyd Wright making reviews to his students. Now, the review, all those who are teaching architecture are probably familiar with this process, okay? And if we want to categorize the review, it is very complicated. According to most recent researches in teaching, and especially we have these modes of interaction: student content, student, teacher, teacher content, and teacher, teacher. Now, the review, okay, the Frank Lloyd Wright review here, is something where the teacher is interacting with the student, but he is interacting with the content. And the student is also interacting with the content in that same time. So it is, in a way, a very complicated, very complex structure in terms of interaction. Well, also, it is both formal and informal. It's not formal because it's not coded. So, it can happen informally, but it's formal in a way because it's like a ritual. It's something that you do in the studio. We do it every week or twice a week. It's individual, he is talking to one student, but all the other students are looking at him. So it's individual and it's collective. It's formal, it's an informal. It's a student content, teacher, student. So it's probably the most deep and meaningful learning process that we might want to think of, at least according to Anderson and Garrison, who have categorized these modes of interaction. Then, we have these learning outcomes. So these are the learning outcomes of the studio I'm teaching this semester, which is Arc 302, Architectural Design Studio 5 at Özyeğin University. So these are not exactly Bloom taxonomized learning outcomes, but this is what we have. Analyze construction materials, use construction materials in architectural design, solve problems of building service systems, analyze building systems, implement building, and apply all of the above in the integrated way to the design process. Now, these are the learning outcomes. So this is what we should have, coming out of our students in the studio. And and then, now that we're doing it online, we asked ourselves, what are the reviews available to, what are the tools available to do these kind of reviews? So some of these results are also already published online on this link here. And let's go quickly to examine some of these options. One is the integrated Annotate plugin in Moodle platform, which we are using at as a learning management system at Özyeğin, which we have. It's very powerful. It allows you to do annotation directly onto the PDF, which is uploaded into the submission form of the platform therein. And this can be streamed through, we use Microsoft Teams, but it could be Zoom, it could be Meet, or anything else. And what is then done on that PDF can be saved directly into the same PDF. So the students can submit his work PDF, and then we can have the review or jury, and then save it. And then later on, he can, download that same PDF and have the annotation saved on that file, just as if he would come to the review with his piece of paper and we put, our marks over there. And we have been using this for the juries in the studio. The Whiteboard, the Microsoft Whiteboard, which is integrated within the Microsoft Teams, is another very powerful package which we have been using and testing, and it's very versatile, much more versatile than the annotation option you have here in Zoom, because it allows you to save the result into, and people can upload their JPEG or PDF, I think, as well, onto the board, and then so the student can upload his file and the teacher can do the annotations, and then you can save the whole thing and for future reference. We have been using this for reviews. Then there is in Microsoft Teams, which we're using, the OneNote notebook, class notebook, which is integrated there, and there students can put their JPEGs and we can comment them directly online using the Microsoft Teams. We have been doing this in the first part of our studio, of our online studio, for the reviews. Then we have discovered we have tested the Google Classroom annotation function within the assignment module, which is versatile, but it only allows these written comments and squares and circles, I think. So it's not possible to draw. So that is something that could be used for different functions, but not probably for the studio. We have discovered the Google Jamboard, which is integrated within the educational suite of Google, which was not activated within Özyeğin University. So we had it activated and now it's working. And so we're doing reviews with this. We're going to give you a live demo of this in a few seconds. It is highly interactive. Students can upload their drawing there. The teacher can make the comments on top of that file, and then it can be saved somewhere for future reference. But also more than one person can do the same interaction on top of that same drawing. And we're going to be testing this in a few seconds. We have also tested the online whiteboard for real-time visual collaboration, which works almost the same as Jamboard, with even, for some things it's even better, but it is, a limited trial option. You would have to pay to get the complete function, which we could not afford in this phase. I also asked the pricing for the company, and I shared that pricing with our dean and head of department. I would like to salute our head of department. He is here, Professor Murat Şahin. But we didn't get the money to do this. Finally, the Belkin Stage Pro, which is a paid app, but it is free for Android, which is something you can use to comment online drawings, but also models, maquette. So it can take a picture or a video of any reality you have in front of yourself, including a real site to survey or a building, and then you can make marks on top of that in real time. Okay. So within all these different options, we tested and practiced two different orientations. One is the formal review, what we call the Judy. So midterm final Judy. And we did this in a very formal way with using these tools. The Rubric, so that's a written piece of paper, PDF file in this case, with all the information about the evaluation process and the details of the submission. So all the rules of the game, that's very important. Because being online and far away from each other, if you don't share transparently the rules of what you're doing, you cannot get the transparency and the trust with the students. And then we use Moodle for the submission, and then we use Google Files to share those submissions with the Judy members, and then we use Google Meet for the Judy to meet. And then Giorgio Verdiani was with us in the Judy, so he knows. We collected all the drawings into one big PowerPoint, which we saved as a PDF, shared the PDF with the Judy, and the Judy made individual annotations on that PDF within their own annotation program, and we sent back that same file to the students for feedback. This is our Judy right there, and this is the Rubric, and that is the meeting done on Google Meet, but also we had a evaluation form which was using Google file, a spreadsheet on Google, so every Judy member could put his evaluation in here. And then we stream synchronously the comments of the Judy with the students using the Google Meet and the PDF annotation tools. And this is one example of one annotated file and this was done with a PDF editor on iPad with an Apple Pencil. And the informal review, which is what you usually do every week or twice a week in the studio, when the students come to you and say, Hocam, can I show you my project? Yes, sit down. And you start drawing on top of that, but other people join, and that's an informal gathering, which we have to distinguish. It's different from the Judy or the exam. And we did this in the last time we're doing it with Google Jamboard and Microsoft Teams for the meeting, for the streaming. And these are some examples of those reviews, which are basically, this is a JPEG. JPEG is loaded on the Jamboard by the student, and then I'm making my comments there on top, and then he can save for reference the JPEG with the annotations. But the whole thing is happening stream synchronously, so everyone is listening. And then we also save the video and we stream it asynchronously for those students who could not take part in the meeting and they might want to take part later for electricity problems. I mean, one of our collaborators, Özyeğin University, she helped us with the organization of the conference. She cannot be here now because there's no electricity in her district in Istanbul at this moment. And so she cannot, join us. So we're going to record this meeting and also save it and stream it later for those who cannot attend. And these are other of those drawings. We're going to do a live demo of this in a second with the help of Simge Alak, who is one of our graduating student at the Department of Architecture. And this is another. These are from Design Studio 5. And we're going to do a live demo right here with the help of Özyeğin, who is not online, unfortunately, and Simge Alak. So I'm going to now go onto an iPad, onto the iPad, and I'm going to start sharing my screen there so that you can see directly, hopefully, you never know what happens here, you never know what happens. You never know, so it seems to be working. You're going to see directly what happens on my iPad. So what you see there is the Jamboard. And now I'm going to ask Simge to help us out by loading one of her drawings there.
Right now I'm loading a document. It's uploading right now.
So this is what we use for reviews. Students can load their drawings up there. But also, what is most important, you can see this not only through the video, as you are doing it now, but through the link. So if you open the same link I have given you before, if you wish, can you copy it onto the chat also when you've done, please?
Yes. Okay.
Simge. You can open the same page we're in and see it directly on your browser. And we did not open this function right now for you to make comments as well, but because 75 people, oh my God, too many. We got 75 people here in the conference. But usually our students are allowed themselves to make, comments on top of this because
okay, and you're 15 minutes now, so focus.
It's done. It's done. So the point is, that there's a problem with the road on the outside here. Okay, so this vehicular road is cutting the access to the pedestrians from the seashore to the building itself. So the building becomes isolated. I do suggest that instead you take this vehicular road out and design some kind of surface on the ground as a public space, and just so sketching a possible pattern so that the building is not isolated by the by the rest of the waterfront. And you can do this also. We have different line widths, different colors, and so just to show you the functionality of this. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's go back to my presentation here, which is finished. I beg your pardon.
That was a really good presentation. You have nice comments.
Wait a minute. I got a new just to show you what is behind the scenes. So what you have seen here now, okay, what is happening behind the screen is this. So we got 3 computers. One is for the streaming, one is for the large view, one is for the small, and one is the iPad with the Apple Pencil. And to conclude, we would like to quote Louis Henry Sullivan: "To teach is to touch the heart and impel to action." Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was really good. Very nice comments in the chat, if you can see. They have some very quick question before. So one of the questions was, well, how about working in teams? How do you cope with lots of people? Like when you need to share probably different parts of the, or we do it in the end?
Let's
because
in the end. Okay, let's go with the next one, please.
Okay, next presentation. That's
Professor TODOR, before passing to the other presentation, Professor Alessandro mentioned my name. It's impossible to say a few things, if you allow me.
Yes, please. Quickly.
Thank you. By this means, I would like to thank you and then thank the organizing committee on behalf of the faculty of my school and on myself. Also, thanks for the contribution of the speakers and the lovely participation. And then wish you a fruitful meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Ajahn. See you soon, inshallah.
Well, okay. Well, then I'm going to present Giorgio Verdiani, who is associate professor at Florence Department of Architecture, and he works with CAD and computer graphics. Is that correct?
Correct.
And he's also there is a well, probably digitalization, and he has been a professor also in architecture faculty in University of Tirana, Albania. Yes. And he focuses on computer graphics, but also cultural heritage and yes, cultural and built heritage. So, Giorgio, the screen is yours. Yes, and I'll start your lab. I kind of save the time here on the stopwatch.
Okay, perfect. So, here we go. So, thank you for your presentation, first of all. I am glad for the invitation and for being here to present this really short resume about the recent activities for the online teaching, meeting, and collaboration. First of all, a short list of the presentation, because I like to call the process presented from Alessandro too, the one-to-one process, because most of the time there is the professor, there are the students, but most of the time it's a direct contact, and then move to what happens when you need a work group. So you are not thinking about a relationship between one-to-one, just the meeting, the review, the revision of the drawings, but you needed to establish a collaborative environment. So we are going to talk about the Autodesk 360 and the Dassault 3D experience, which are quite different in the end. And so starting from the one-to-one process, just some short notes about the fact that, well, all of us as professors or as students has experienced in these days this situation where most of the time you have a call with a certain tool, with a certain software that allow you to work together on the same screen, and you start mixing together various items, various solutions. The Rural Heritage and Built Heritage is the, for example, the Sketchfab platform, because it allows you to see 3D models, to talk about details, to see directly the 3D model in all its parts, is extremely efficient also for presenting cultural heritage items, art history elements, and so on. And maybe you know it too well, but it's a sort of YouTube for the 3D models, where you put your 3D model, you add all the information you want about the work you have done, and then you can move, rotate, explore the element, check the geometry of the object, and study well the object. So this is extremely well working, but it needs some work behind, because you work with it well when you have a collection of items. So for example, just yesterday, just to make a sample, just to start a new degree thesis about the towers of the Mediterranean coast, we have a meeting with the student trying to define his subject and analyzing various towers along the Valencian coast we have in our archives online in Sketchfab. So it's easy to check together the models, to make a check to inside, for example, Google Maps or Google Earth in real time, check the positioning, the place of the various castle fortification system, and then switch back to the 3D model and take a look to the exterior or even to the interiors when they are available, and study with the student about the shape, the similarities, the very specific aspect of the building. And so what's in the end? That the one-to-one procedure is obviously extremely interesting, but it has some very strong point. For example, the natural presence of one guidance administrator that try to organize and chair the meeting. Then you have a lot, the continuous possibility of mixing things that is extremely positive. As Alessandro just showed, it's possible to switch between different software, and the user get a lot of information from the available materials. And then during the meeting, you have an extended voice and chat support, and all you need to talk with people that are with you. And this can take time, sometimes even more than a standard meeting. in a room. But there are some negative aspects, like, for example, that most of the time, a lot of the meeting, a lot of the things that are said and annotated are not structured in a rational way. There are various files, and they are not a part of a project about developing or discussion about a single topic. And also the in most of the situation is a one-side set of operations. So the professor, the chair of the meeting draw lines, add information, but there is not a collaborative environment. Most of the time is one-side operation. This can be better because in time it's possible to imagine that people start to work together on it. But now most of the time is a one-side situation. And then obviously everything is afflicted, may be afflicted by the stream inequality, because you put together various software, you try to use video and 3D models in real time. This can be a little bit tricky from the point of view of the quality of the stream. And so how can we consider to start moving to from the one-to-one situation to a work group, to something that allows you to collaborate? One of the very, very easy to access a solution may be, for example, the platform of Autodesk, the very basic A360 platform that for the academics is free, for the student is free, and all of you to put together in a very simple interface projects like this one, a very simple project to create a set of files inside the project and then work on it using annotation, using collaborative tools. This is quite efficient because allows you to create a group of participants, then go to files that can be DVG or PDF or image files, and then open the, for example, the PDF with or without annotation. Any size is okay, even large PDF can be used easily, and then add extra annotation, make your consideration, and do the classic work about reading the present notes, adding new, and so on. But very nice, you can work directly on the DVG files, and you have a nice set of tools that allow you to add notes, to add detailed pins that with a note, and then you can take a measurement, you can make your consideration, may control the size of spaces and so on. This can be done by more than one operator at the same time, and you can add your notes, various extra information, and complete the work with extra details. And when you have done, you save the notes, the file. You have not edited the DVG, but you have a set of notes that are overlapping the original DVG. So for the student that want to work, you can download the back or simply take a look to the screen and edit all the things, but this is shared between all the students in the group. And once more, recently, Autodesk added a completely online tools, the Fusion 3D modeling that can be used completely online. So you don't need the software on your computer, you use it online. Obviously, when you start working with it, Autodesk show you that it is an experimental tool. So pay attention because it's a preview of the final one, but you can use it 100% and it works extremely well. So you can use the classical tools for modeling. It may remember since the beginning of Fusion in a certain way, it looked like a sort of advanced SketchUp interface, but is quite fine, and you can export toward the full version. Now, the Autodesk 360 has various advantages. It's extremely direct, easy to use. There is a very good support for various formats, and there is the possibility to even extend the sharing. You can create a group large as you like, give different priority or characteristic to the participant, and then there is a very interesting integrated software that allows people to enter in contact with a modern interface, a very good tool for modeling. The problem are that you have a very essential interface, so it's very, very basic, and there is no real editing tools for the DVG because you simply add notes, you cannot edit, move, or transform the DVG. There are no compliant PDF functions. So you edit the PDF, you add notes, but then you cannot save an edited PDF, or you have to print it back again. So it's a little bit tricky. And then there are no direct editing tools for image, but very nice, is completely free for the academic environments. If you want more than this, not the student, but the university has to pay, and is even a little bit expensive. You have to move to the BIM 360, and then you have a lot of more tools, and you can edit the models, you can share the Revit files, and so on. But in this basic version, the fact that you have a modeling tools is extremely interesting. Then recently we started, but we just stopped a little because of the shutdown, the lockdown of everything, but it is very interesting. We take the license for a very expensive tool that is the Dassault 3D Experience, because they ask for 5,000 euros for 100 of license for the university, but is an extremely powerful set of tools completely online. So you have to download about 1 gigabyte of setup, but then you have a complete set of tools that can be shared online. So what happens is that you have the possibility to administer a large group of people, up to 100. You can create how many administrators and students and participants you need. And then what you get is the possibility to create this, what they call a dashboard, that allows people to collaborate to a set of drawing, of project, of 3D models, of elements. The basic structure recall, obviously, the modern interface, the latest interface of KTH, and allow you to have a drafting and a drawing at extremely high level of quality. Very nice, you can create private or public element. So you can decide to have a public element that is protected. So you can decide to have element inside the same drawing, layers that are managed by different people. Then the drawing is the classical CAD system, and you have also tools that allow you to set the characteristic of the user, so defining them as a manager or simply client or server in the whole process. And you get an extremely powerful tool with a lot of extra tools like modeling of figures, drawing by images, and rendering engine, and so on. So it's a complete tool fully online. So it's extremely advanced, allows to create a group of people working on the same project, check the level of work of everyone, and then develop a project that are probably better and extremely fitting the purpose of object design, vehicle design, and so on. And then, little by little, you can start to move also to architectural and BIM strategies of representation. This is quite efficient, and quickly, we can say that this kind of tools is extremely powerful. There is an excellent support from Rich and tools, and there is the possibility to personalize everything. And then when you have finished, you can pass the models and the draft extremely to offline tools. But there are various troubles yet. For example, it is very complex.
Sorry to remind you that you're running out of time, just a little more time for you. just to remind you. Sorry for interrupting.
Perfect. In 1 second, that is finished. And so the price, the extremely complex interface, and the structure of work that is not the common for the architects, maybe a little bit tricky. But for all the rest is an extremely powerful tool. So, final conclusion, I want to say that in this period we are using and learning solutions, but we will be extremely happy to go back to the room, to the class, and I think that there is the next challenge that is incoming, and is about not thinking about that exists in class or an online learning, but yet before we start this forced experience, there was an ongoing about the hybrid learning and teaching, partially online and partially on site. So thank you for your attention and happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Giorgio. That was really cool because we start from those who are kind of, we are entering more professional tools like CAD and hopefully BIM, because they probably have a good answer to kind of a teamwork across continents that can be used, but no one has mentioned like Revit or ArchéA, Graphisoft. I think they have. I haven't done like across continents work, but I as you said, there is a Revit 360, yes, where you know you can have the BIM environment, and so it's probably for designing airplanes and kind of these different things. So it's not really intuitive to architects. But thank you. Anyone has quick questions, and I'm going to present. If there is no, I'm going to go quickly to Malgo to present. No other questions?
Perfect.
Well, I'm going to present Małgorzata. So I met Małgorzata a few years ago in ISUF, and she's working for a parallel International Society of City and Regional Planners, ISOCARP, where she kind of organizes conferences. She's vice president, but she's a associate professor at Lodz University of Technology, and she's originally architect and has a background in architecture, and she's been a Fulbright scholar at MIT at the Sensible City Laboratory, Karl Rattis Laboratory. And Małgorzata really is interested in morphology, particularly historical morphology and the Jewish settlements around Lodz. So she has a very interesting analysis of how the city transformed over the time after World War II. So Malgo, are you ready? I have to unmute you.
I will. Yes, I am there. Thank you. So I will perhaps share my screen if I can. One moment, please. Okay. Okay, and now the presentation. So actually my presentation, can you hear me? Please tell me. Okay, thank you, Todor. So my presentation is going to be slightly different because, well, in here it's not mentioned in the title, but first I'd like to introduce the courses which I am teaching right now, and this is mostly the reason why I decided to talk about that. Then I would talk about the main challenge, which in this case for me at first it was lack of face-to-face contact. Then I'd like to share with you some methods and tips and tricks which might perhaps occur useful for you too. Tell you something about the conclusions and also show some examples. So basically the topic which I'd like to talk about is lecturing. Lecturing in urban design. It happened just happened that I kind of had to take on several lectures at the same time in the beginning of the semester due to various like external circumstances, and there are quite many of them at the same time, which at first was quite a huge challenge, but after when I got used to that, because it's I must admit quite challenging to switch so quickly to this online platform. It gave me some breath for thought, which I'd like to share here. I teach in Łódź University of Technology, as TODOR mentioned. I also I am involved in 2 courses in Warsaw University of Technology, also in the Faculty of Architecture. There, actually, I had the opportunity to acquire some previous, some former experience when it comes to teaching, as the course which I'm involved in is quite interesting. It's called Architecture for Society of Knowledge, and at first we had to explore, it was 10 years ago, some methods of online teaching. So this gave me some like previous experience. However, at this time, while trying to teach online, I am in Łódź, and my students, well, I had such experience that for some reasons we tried to kind of collaborate remotely. At the time, it was quite difficult to compete with face-to-face activities. And this already, I was then thinking, okay, it's nice, I record my lectures, they watch it as a supporting activity, but in general, it's kind of visual teaching. And while competing with face-to-face, it's hard to get into that. Another element which I'd like to emphasize, which is very nice and which is really kind of helping me right now to build all this experience and also give some theoretical insights into that. It's the course which myself and several of my colleagues had the opportunity to take, which was organized by Polish Ministry of Science and Higher Education. It was called, because it's still ongoing, Masters of Didactics. There were several universities involved as hosts. Myself and several of my colleagues, we got to University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And actually, well, very similar seminar, only not teaching in architecture, but about general teaching, we had yesterday, which actually I find very relevant and quite useful. So I'd like to share a little bit of this experience. So as I said, the first and major challenge of these lectures is that I don't see faces of my students. So normally I would have an auditorium with well, in here it's final presentation of students' projects. That's why they express so much attention, but normally I have an auditorium. There is around 50, 30 or 70 people there, and or a bit more, but I see their faces, I see their reactions to what I am presenting, and I feel less or more confident. It's all fine. I know whether they listen, whether it's interesting or not that much. And I can react and well, change the tone of my speech. And right now, suddenly I found myself in this situation that I have no idea what they think, whether it's boring or not. So I started thinking, okay, so perhaps it should be done a little bit differently. So this is this main question, and a little bit of what I thought after that, well, there should be slightly higher level of interaction in order to deal with this monotony, because, well, also observing, for instance, my own daughter when she participates in some online activities, Sometimes when it's particularly boring, she just starts watching films or doing some other things. So it's of course not necessary to include too many distractions, because it should be formal and it's university, but still perhaps we should do something about that. One thing which I noticed is that along with increased interaction, which can take on various forms, we might involve our students more. This interaction might be either direct, related to synchronous communication, or indirect. And then it might take on such forms as quizzes, assignments, and tasks. Of course, there are also other obvious methods like tests, online lessons, which enable students to practice and repeat. There should be also some references to things which the audience are familiar with. This might help them to understand simply and interact. Another set of solutions is related to this second element, so decreased monotony. We might use various media, but of course without exaggeration. We might use books, we might read them loud, we might show pieces of text, we might recommend further sources, we might require reading, we might embed some films. Perhaps I am telling you obvious things, but we need to realize that when we don't do that, it's simply going to be that monotonous and boring that nobody would like to follow. We shouldn't avoid repetitions. This is something which I really learned. We sometimes should start with some message, afterwards explicitly tell our audience what they are expected to learn from this, and afterwards summarize the content so they are sure that they understand properly. And it's also good to question about this summary and the most important pieces which should come out of that. A pinch of humor is also welcome. What's more, on the other hand, there are constraints. Some students have got quite complicated access to technology. There are also situations in their lives, which I call here social background, but for instance, some of my students, they work in for example, some health services. There are such people. So we need to realize that they wouldn't have time to contribute in the synchronous way. So we should realize that there should be some part of flexibility. We need to be gentle both to ourselves and to our students. We need to give necessary time. Well, the sense of humor, which I'm repeating here, but another thing which is quite relevant and important and should be taken into account is the very fact that there are tasks which can be both synchronous and asynchronous. This diagram which I am showing on the right, it comes from the presentation which actually I heard yesterday by Tracy Pelzer from University of Groningen. She quotes here another instructor, and it is there emphasize that this discussion, which is synchronous form of communication, should be part of the larger teaching process. And this teaching process actually might consist of asynchronous communication, and this synchronous communication, which should be a sort of unique event accompanied by these other phases, it should be something which needs to be valued, because we need to find this time to be together. It doesn't have to be the only form of communication. We might, we should realize, and this slide also I kind of, well, it's not exactly the origin, but I got very strongly inspired by what we were showed. Well, they emphasize the necessity to distinguish these two forms of communication. And what is quite interesting in this, we should design the whole process of online teaching, which combines both forms. Then we are able to provide much easier, let's say, path for students to follow. This requires a little bit of empathy and quite a lot of actually work and thinking. Well, I'd like to share a little bit of technical background as well, and some of the experience. So, for instance, as when it comes to the platform which we use, we have got a specially crafted software for our university. We use a webinar platform which is based on ClickMeeting software. It's a company, as far as I know, it's German. It's worldwide. As the background platform, we use Wacom, which is adjusted Moodle. It's also a little bit modified Moodle, but with all the functions of Moodle. Well, I'd like to illustrate some of these statements which I just gave. So, for instance, about this, you know, showing of books. Actually, this I find extremely useful, that I can use these online platforms, because finally I can, you know, not carry all these books to the university in order to show them to students. I can just simply tell them what is in the book, what is this about, and recommend it. And I seriously find this this small piece quite useful, because it makes me, I think, much more convincing also. Going further, an example of an assignment. I tested it in different, let's say, conditions. This is just an example of one of various assignments I am using. And in here, well, I tested in synchronous and asynchronous communication. So we had some small chat and discussion about this topic. I also asked students to write their opinion. I noticed that when they are given time to reflect after, it's often much richer than the answers which they dare to give in public. This is also quite interesting. I'm also trying to use very simple charades. For instance, I define attendance keys, which in order to register their presence, which are not like straightforward names or very complicated chains of signs, but I look for some questions so they memorize at least one word or one name. Other forms of interaction, especially with asynchronous communication. For instance, we managed recently, there was a film Urbanized by Gary Hastwit shown online. So I asked students questions about this watched film. I'm trying also, and this has also been emphasized by these researchers from Groningen, I'm trying also to give them assignments in order to train them in some competences. This is not so obvious in groups of 70 students or so, but when some activities are repeated based on various examples, after a while they really master some skills, and it works. For one of the lectures, they are actually
Malgo, 15 minutes, sorry.
Okay, this is the last slide.
Okay, great.
So they are actually creating a small, let's say, task, which is a small project of a calendar for the participatory scenario. well, lessons and exams, it's quite obvious. For synchronous communication, it's more ad hoc, but it's also important so students just concentrate. And this can be just chat, conversation. Kahoot questions are very good. Really, people take part. There are also other types of polls for tutorials, but this is the topic for another discussion. We use freehand InDesign and Miro with Microsoft Teams. I polled my colleagues and I noticed that this is very useful and well, gives a lot of possibilities for interaction, especially this InDesign. I like it very much. Well, thank you for your attention.
No, thank you. That was really nice, a kind of a perspective on how to understand online teaching, not really on the process, but also a deeper kind of, how to say, a deeper or wider perspective on online teaching. So anyone has a quick question, or we just go, I'll just go to Frederick. Well, Frederick is a practicing architect and an adjunct professor at Pratt University in Brooklyn, New York. And he's a fellow of the American Academy in Rome and coordinator of the undergraduate architecture Rome program. My little one is kind of getting here a bit annoyed. My apologies. And he has we talked a few days ago, and he has a really interesting tool to show about when you cannot travel the cities, how you can analyze cities or with walkthroughs. So, Frederick, I hope, so the screen is yours. Are you?
I'm on. Thank you. Thank you so
Great.
much. Yes, let me start my screen. So let me just first say thank you so much for including me in your online tools and strategies seminar, and thank you also to Tom Rankin for introducing me to Dr. Camiz. So can you see that? There we go. So I'm the academic coordinator for Pratt Institute's undergraduate architecture Rome program. Pratt Institute is a 125-year-old art and design school based in Brooklyn, New York. Its Rome program is now approaching its 50th year. Every spring, we take 40 students, about 1/3 of our fourth-year class, to Rome for a full semester. We promote the program for its independent and unique curriculum within the larger professional degree matrix. It's different, of course, because it's a fully experience-based learning, using the city as the classroom for every one of the 6 courses that make up its 20 credits. Just very quickly, the curriculum, located in the 4th year of a 5-year professional degree program. Like all of our semesters, it is centered on the 5-degree design studio. Everything else supports that. The design problem that students engage is supported directly by an urban studies course, about which I'm going to return to, as well as a freehand sketching course which documents the space of the city. These courses are complemented by 2 history classes, Rome as Spectacle, looking at Renaissance and Baroque transformations, and Modern Italian Architecture, which engages the more radical departures of the 20th century. Of course, an Italian language completes the curriculum. So the methodology. All of the courses engage the city of Rome as a classroom. The design studio, through its initial exercise and citing of its principal problem, both of which involve repeated visits to recommended locations as a way to form more direct personal responses to faculty recommendations. The sketchy course selects identifiable moments within that urban fabric that can summarize urban sensibilities. Rome as Spectacle and Modern Italian Architecture are classes that rely on excursions, not slide lectures, to directly present the material and communicate a deeper understanding. Even the Italian language course engages the city with learning exercises that take place at coffee bars, restaurants, food kiosks, and even the train station, in ways that are probably more typical for a language class to celebrate at its conclusion. All of this, I'm sure, is well understood to anyone engaged in seated foreign studies programs. The city is the locus of learning, or as I like to say about our program, it is the encounter, the physical encounter with the city of Rome, a place foreign yet familiar, profound and contradictory, that challenges one's design priorities. So, back to Brooklyn, and then to online learning. Our own program's move to online learning came in 2 steps. Following the announced COVID outbreak in Lombardy, the Institute convened a task force to address their situation. Within 3 days, they had made the unprecedented decision to bring the students back to Brooklyn. Then they had to confront the question, should they continue with the same coursework now that they were no longer in Rome? The answer was yes. They could continue with their design studio as always, just in a new space to be set up for them. They could continue to sketch the city, only this time New York City. They could continue to take their walks for the history courses, only the plan was to convert those to documentary-like videos that could be watched and discussed over online platforms. The language class would be the only one that would probably sort of engage a new faculty member back in Brooklyn. And then just as the new space for them was being completed, coincident with their 14-day quarantine, the Institute closed its campus and went to online learning. Because of our advanced preparation, this wasn't as difficult as it could have been. All of the classes moved then to the same online platforms that we are discussing today and are being used in other locations, in particular Zoom and Google Meet. The original intention to film the necessary walking tours had to be canceled, as Rome's stay-at-home order eliminated that as a possibility. The walking tour classes then all reverted to more traditional slide lectures, except one course, and that was our Urban Studies course. The Urban Studies course engages in a deeper experiential examination of Rome by first identifying the city's critical identities as layers. The classical city centered on the Forum and its extension as armature to the gates in its walls, the labyrinthine medieval city centered on the Campo Marzio, the Baroque city characterized by Sixtus V's axial network, the 19th century capital city expansion, but also intervention into its fabric to plant a new national identity, and then the radical erasures of the 1930s to symbolically link the fascist state to its Roman and Augustan origin. The distinctive spatial character of each of these walks, each running several hours, but always remaining embedded within a particular character of a particular layer or historical era, was a necessary device in communicating urban differentiation. While the walks could have also been translated into slide lectures, we decided to experiment with the option to film canceled. The question was, could Google Earth, together perhaps with iMovie for editing, actually be a reasonable vehicle? It turned out that it could. Perhaps somewhat low-tech in one way, it turned out to be an interesting way to synthesize material. Maps, historical representations, early photographs, all could be brought together with narration while moving in Google Earth's virtual space. Here on the screen is the itinerary for our 4th layer or 4th walk, the late 19th century intervention that created the modern Corso Vittorio Emanuele II. And so I'm going to show you a very brief 4-minute sort of edited clip from this particular walk, the road from Pope to King. So here it is. Let's hope it starts up without any problems.
What you see is that it's really broken down into 2 sort of strategies. The first strategy is one that I would say is more consistent with the way that Pia described it, right? As a very careful surgical incision into the fabric of the city. And so zooming out, we're going to see the Ponte Vittorio as our first point of departure. And we're going to end up at Piazza Venezia. Okay, here we go. And so what you can see here, now we're going to swing around, and there's the bridge from the river view, and head down the Corso, the road from Pope to King. And just pausing here at the sort of entrance threshold, we have, we see the kind of section that this wide street presents to us. Remember, this was, so now we're continuing down the course, so now we're going to turn back to the left and look to the other sort of central artery of that trident. There you see the Castle San Angelo perfectly lined up with that. And of course, once again, we see in the distance, we see the Church of San Andrea della Valle, and that's giving us a kind of character, right? That's the element that now begins to distinguish this street as not being a typical European street. This is now, this is an important moment on the walk because it's where the Via Papalis sort of conjoins with the Corso Vittorio Emanuele. So everything on the right is sort of rebuilt, and what was on the left as we were passing through there was remaining. And now we're basically given a kind of wide open space in order to negotiate where we're going to be going, which is over here on the left. We'll pause for a second. We'll look over the Largo area, excavation site. I wanted to just pause here for a second. So in this case, the south side of the street is original fabric, and the north, yes, the south side, and the north side to the left is all the reconstructed facades. And from about the center line, maybe even a little bit further over of the street, that has been pulled back. So you can see how originally this would have had a more, so I would agree that this has a more careful sensibility to it. So arriving at the Gesù now and turning to the right, what we see now is the axis that leads up to the Campidoglio, and here it is in the Noli plan, which you're all familiar with because, in fact, this is the area of your site, the Piazza Archelli at the bottom of the Campidoglio, and so this is where the Via Papalis then turns right and continues over to the Campidoglio, but our Corso Vittorio will continue straight along the side of this. And ultimately then entering the Piazza Venezia with Mussolini's urban ideas. Okay, so now here you see the monument. What you see.
So that was the clip. I showed you just a few seconds at the end of a film that was embedded there, Roman Holiday. The idea was that with each one of these walks, at the end, there was a desire to sort of bring in its somewhat similar sort of understanding or representation of the city that had been already produced through film. And you know, so it's just one of the things that I think, you know, I mentioned, you know, you can integrate you know, sort of still imagery, older maps. The final walk that we did, which actually was the Via del Mare, that was, part of the whole fascist regulating plan, which was with its extensive demolition, was less heavy on the maps and more focused on the sort of continuation, the continuation of the passage, which would be more consistent with the idea of traveling in an automobile as opposed to being a pedestrian who is consistently stopping and sort of observing. I have to say that this has been the production of these because the course was already let's say a third of the way through its content. We were basically picking up and producing the last 3 of the sort of 5 layers, and it was quite exciting to engage in this. So I'm of a mixed opinion as to whether or not I think this is sort of low production value or it's appropriate production value in a funny sort of way. Certainly, I throw up some conclusions here, which is that this could actually be something that gets sort of reinvested, whether we're meeting face to face or not, because it presents different, it presents a kind of critique of the notion of the slide lecture, which of course has this sort of long history now in terms of the way to communicate architectural history to students, but which has always relied then, since the lantern slide, on this kind of still image. And the sort of, let's say, repercussions of that, unintended in many cases, repercussions of that, which is to sort of always be looking at architectural form as these sort of standalone elements, and not having the opportunity to sort of really engage the context in which things are always operating. And it just seems to me that there's a kind of a greater wide open possibility here if one were to begin to try to utilize this as a real strength to sort of focus almost entirely on context as opposed to object. So that was really my whole presentation. I think I'm not using up my whole time. I give that back to the chair.
No, but that was a fantastic presentation. Very nice comments. You got lots of nice comments. You can read them later. I absolutely find it amazing because, I mean, we whenever we do this conference at ISUF, we always organize small tours. So I usually joke that urban morphologists are the best tour guides of cities. So there's always some urban morphologists walking us around and explaining us all the small details. But this is fantastic because it's also documented. It's kind of like an extra YouTube movie of a kind of a personal, kind of like a travel journey, but professionally done. So it's amazing. So I don't know if anyone has again a question, very quick for Frederick. I definitely have one question because I mean, no one. While I search for my Rome is very interesting. For example, San Clemente, the church, has 3 levels, one above each other. Yeah. Have you ever managed to grasp this kind of multi-layerness of through the Google walkthrough?
Well, I have to say Google Earth.
Google Earth, yeah.
Google Earth has a rather remarkably extensive file set that is, of course, available to you, but it does not go everywhere.
Yeah,
it's not perfect. And so there are gaps. There are gaps even on the streets of Rome. There are gaps that we came upon because the first one we did was walking Sixtus V's plan, which, by the way, when doing that in real life, takes too long to do in the course of a class. But in this case, we can do almost the entire thing. But we discovered a few gaps in the whole process.
No, but it's a great. Just Rome was the only city in the world who has many levers in the same building, so you can kind of look at it. So it will work everywhere. I stop. Next presentation. Thank you. That was really a bit different perspective, but lots. Now we have Tom Rankin from. So he's an American architect with a master in architecture from Harvard and BA from Princeton and laurea from architecture from Sapienza in Rome. and he has lived in Rome practicing architecture and teaching since 1991. And Tom teaches at Sapienza, the California Polytechnic Rome program of architecture, and Iowa State Rome program. And he's also a Fulbright scholar, former director of non-profit association Terno Onlus and American Institute of Roman Culture. So, Tim, you have the screen?
Thank you, Todor. Yes.
And,
yes, thank you.
Okay.
You covered it all there.
Yes.
I'm going to just pull up my. Hold on a second. Share content. I'm doing this from my iPad, which is an experiment for me. So I have a slideshow here. So you should be seeing virtual walks in real places, right? Let me know if that's showing up on the screen. Okay, great, thanks. So this is, it's fantastic to follow my friend Frederick, who has really introduced, more than introduced, the same kind of subject that I want to address. I'm going to take my time to have this be more of a expanding and expounding on this notion of how we take our students through places that they can't physically be in. I mean, in my work, I'm very concerned, I'm very interested in place, in practices of place and place making. And like Frederick and his class, much of what I do in teaching is out on site, in the field, in places. I want to start with Goethe. It's always good to start with Goethe. And I often tell my students, as I'm preparing them to come to Rome, not to worry too much, because Goethe says that only in Rome can one educate oneself for Rome, which kind of undermines everything Frederick just said. Like, forget it. Only in Rome can you educate yourself for Rome. But of course, that's not really true. Goethe himself, in a book I have handy here, see, I can pull up my book as well, Italian Journey. He talks about how he spent so much time preparing to come to Rome, looking at artifacts that his father had in the mantelpiece in his home, and imagining when he would come to Rome. So there was a lot of preparation, more than our students do today. And then when he came to Rome, I thought I had another second quote ready to go here, but when he came to Rome, he said that, I wish I'd bookmarked it, I could almost paraphrase it, I suppose. He said that Rome unveils something which you could have not expected, that it's much richer than you could have ever expected, and that, you know, finally your life can continue. Yeah, and interestingly, my slides got out of order. This is part of the technical glitch. Let me just view through these to see. Okay, well, that's all right. I'm going to just talk around some of the things that I had hoped to share, unless I can figure out why they're not all showing up here. Yeah, this is too bad, because I have actually quite a few more slides which have disappeared from this presentation. Bear with me just 1 minute. If Todor, if you are able to let me into the Zoom meeting from my laptop, I think that would make it much
okay,
more.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly open up Zoom on my laptop.
Yes,
and,
no problem.
Join a meeting. Hopefully the meeting will still be there from before. If
Yeah,
not,
I think so. You can join from several.
Yeah. Okay. Should be asking to join from another address. And as soon as that comes in, I'm going to close this one.
You're in.
Okay, am I in as a second Tom Rankin? Okay, I'm leaving.
Yes.
There you go, Tom Rankin, The Revenge.
Yeah, okay, so Tom Rankin is back, and I know I'm recording. Okay, now you can see the second good quote, I believe, right? That was a quick comeback. So as soon as one sees with one's own eyes the whole which one had hitherto only known in fragments, a new life begins. So the idea that Goethe says, you can know it in fragments, but only when you come to Rome does it come together. Okay, you're following me here, right?
Yes.
So this is what I normally do. Bunch of American students walk around with me. Sometimes they're not students, sometimes they're adults, interested groups, travelers of all sorts. But I take them through the city, and we have all these limitations. We can't walk in the middle of the street, it's noisy. They do all sorts of things, not just in Rome, but around Italy. And Frederick described very much with images the kind of work that these study abroad programs do, sketching, analysis, but of course eating and wading in the cool waters of Sperlunga. There's lots of very physical, very sensual moments too. And I think that that's one of the things I want to address. What are the things that we can't capture with this distance technology? So what happens when we go into lockdown? I too was teaching in February and early March, and the moment we started talking about lockdown, I went out and started making some videos. And I decided that in this presentation, because of the limits on bandwidth, I wasn't going to stream the videos. What I'm going to do instead is, as soon as I finish up, I will drop into the chat window links to about, at this point, 20 different videos, which some of which I shot immediately before the lockdown. As Frederick said, our plans of presenting our walking tour lectures from Rome were shattered by the lockdown, telling us we couldn't go to the places. There's one in which I went out planning to go through the Capitol Line museums, videotaping it for my students, and they closed the museums that day. So instead I went into some other places. And in this screenshot from the video, you see me walking through Trastevere, holding a selfie stick, speaking to the camera, and trying to engage the viewer, the students, on the kind of virtual walking tour. Okay, so it's a different technology from the one Frederick was showing using Google Earth. This lasted for a few days. I started a series on my YouTube channel called Remote Rome, where each day I posted a very, very short 1-minute video, just tempting people to understand a little bit of Rome. They're very, very short though, and experimental. And so actually, yeah, I did a little bit of a video piece in here. So the ability to walk through Trastevere and see it, and this could then be narrated. At about that point, though, something strange happened, and I became completely obsessed with another way of looking at the city, through the webcams, which I, here in Rome, maybe I'm 1.5 kilometers from the Spanish Steps, but I was watching the Spanish Steps the way Alessandro in Istanbul or somebody in Tokyo could, through a webcam. Now here I've just put a still image, but it doesn't matter. This could have been a video. You would see for 10 minutes, nothing happened. And then a person would walk across the stage. And in this case, of course, it's the Piazza di Spagna, so it really is a stage. And I thought, how interesting that everybody can now experience a public space in a way which, if you actually went there, you would be in the picture. If you went to this public space, Now here I have cropped it out a little bit. In reality, when you look at the webcam, it has this rather awkward advertisement for a dentist and all of the social media links and telling you how many viewers there are. And I watched as they grew day by day. So that takes away a bit of the romance. I did a lot of screenshot capturing and transformation of these webcams, and they're also in the videos that I made. And of course, this is the Spanish steps most of our students know, because you could never go there and be the only people. And that's the issue with being on site, is that you're always, you are part of the site. So when I go through Rome with 25 American students, their experience of Rome is a Rome with 25 American students. Strangely, now we have the possibility of experiencing these spaces without our own presence in them by doing it virtually. Now, I too am fixated with Google Earth. At a certain point, I didn't get bored with the webcams. They're still fascinating, but I moved on to Google Earth. And I debated whether in this presentation, at this point, I would just stop the slides and switch over to live streaming Google Earth. But then we run into a problem of bandwidth, which I think is crucial to this whole discussion. And I think it's temporary. You know, there are some gaps in Google still, even in Google, there are gaps. But it's a question of time before bandwidth increases and we're able to do what I can do on my computer. I mean, I can look across time. So right now it goes back to 1941. I can look at the Mausoleo di Augusto over time and see the transformation of time through Google, turning on different layers. But if I want to actually live stream the kind of imagery which Frederick was just showing, and I'm really glad he did because that saves me from having to do it myself. As you fly through the city, over the city, when I'm connected directly to Google, the resolution is quite good and it's very fast and compelling. If I stream it through Zoom to my students, inevitably it slows down, it gets glitchy, and it loses a lot of quality. So I'm convinced that that's just a technical glitch. But there's other, I want to make sure I'm in time here. There's other there's other possibilities that we have using the same technology. Measurement, okay? We can measure anything we want in Google. So we could actually come and survey a site through Google. And if a student is in, say, San Luis Obispo, California, it's actually not so hard for them to measure something in Rome, measure something in their town to compare it to, and understand, even if they can't physically stand outside the Mausoleum of Augustus, they can find something of a similar size in California to associate. So I think measurement is key. And measurement includes, of course, calculating square meters and all these tools, all these layers, which I won't go into. In fact, there's a whole part of that. And of course, we're not limited to the reality of Google, the world today. We can go back into lots of material, which I already share with my students when they're in Rome. We're constantly walking around with a Noli plan and a Tempesta plan. But I almost think that it's better for them to look at these when they are back in their apartment or home, when they can concentrate on them, rather than all of the commotion of seeing these layers. And I really agree that by being able to choreograph this without being on site, there are a lot of real advantages. Okay? And then as we get down into the design aspect, and I missed a lot of the discussion earlier because I was simultaneously teaching a group of Sapienza architecture students while your conversation was going on. I'll be watching it in the recording later. But I won't spend too much time on all of the tools that we have using overlays, using drawing to inform our students about a specific site. giving them the digital material, giving them the CAD plans, all of that can be shared probably better with the high bandwidth of American universities than it could when the students are actually here in the ghetto, in our facilities with questionable internet. They can even get a file, print out a 3D model where they are in New York or California, work with that physical 3D model and come up with their project, send the file, we print it, we insert it into our 3D model. Okay, so I think, you know, that's design. So that's when the design process continues. So what I'm really interested in, what I'm talking about is, how do we give the students the experience of the site? Once they're designing, everything comes into play. Digital, analog, if they're on site, if it's remote, you know, it's not this or that, it's both.
Excuse me, Professor, I need to remind
Yes.
you the time.
Yes, time?
Yeah.
2 minutes.
If we could wrap it up. Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, great. These are, I think, the last couple of slides.
Okay.
So all of that I've talked about so far, it's basically quantifiable data, measurement, all of that scientific stuff. But then the other stuff, the phenomenological, the atmosphere, how do we capture that? And that's the big question. And the next thing that I've been doing has been a series of drawings which take the scientific, take aerial photography. And in these, I've been using aerial photographs and documenting them, marking them up with commentary. And this is where they get back more into a little bit of Goethe's mentality of contemplation, observation, theorizing, and just writing them over the Google imagery. So the reading, the writing, the art, all of that, which students can receive at a distance, so it's a kind of interpretation, I think that has to be put in the picture as well. Not just looking at the kind of cold Google imagery of Venice, but reading Ruskin as you're looking at it. And how about that for a coincidence, Frederick? I swear I didn't just put that in there. The last thing I want to say is that I think the biggest tool that we have available is film. And I did some research on neorealist films when I first came to Italy, and the notion that realism, cinema provides a tool for realism. This project that I'm producing with a colleague, Pia Schneider, at Iowa State University, is called Urban Realities, and it uses film, cinema, to document the neighborhoods of Rome. And in this screenshot, you see the students in the city looking at, you know, the reality. Luckily, we shot all of this just before the lockdown. So I'm going to put some links into the window there so that if you want to follow up, you can take a look at these films and some of the other work that presents this. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Just
that was
unshare
cool.
This. Great.
Super cool.
Great.
Now we come to the last presentation, then we're going to go to the questions. So it's Elias, and Elias was born in Athens, Greece, and he migrated to the US, where he received his bachelor and master degrees. And Elias is not an architect, but he works with design and teaching design and web technology. So it's very interesting. He'll come with a completely new perspective on this. And he's been working on interactive maps, voice narration, videos, references to the Bible, original Greek texts, mosaics, frescoes, photographies. So it will be an interesting, very interesting presentation. Elias?
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now, okay?
Perfect.
Hopefully you can see that. Correct? Can we see that?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for having me. Alejandro, thank you for the invitation, and great meeting you everyone and listening to what you have to say. I'm coming from a completely different part of things. I am part of the architecture department at the Özyeğin University and a full-time lecturer at the communication design department. So primarily I teach animation, mobile interaction design, and studio classes. So for this presentation, I want to talk about the communication side of things. What we as academicians should be doing to deliver our lectures, and my approach to do that by working directly with students, adopting methods such as peer-to-peer reviews, custom training tutorials, as well as YouTube lectures. So the semester is a special semester, not because, of course, because we are experiencing something that we have not experienced before with the pandemic and the isolation, but also the challenges we're facing every day. So I want to talk about the communication side of things. Another thing I would like to mention is that this semester is a bit of a different semester for me, because it's the first time that I get the opportunity to teach a class from the industrial design department, and a class that is challenged me quite a lot, because I'm not familiar with the students' background. With our design communication department, we know this with students very well, etc., etc. So I'm going to get to that a bit later. So the main goal is, the way I see it, is to help students feel included in the process of rethinking education during those challenging times. So we must keep an open and clear channel of communication with students. It's a very, very important step. And I strive to do this by bugging them a lot through Microsoft Teams. I hop into the Teams a lot, I'm online a lot, and I keep asking them if they need help, how do they feel about their project, if they have some ideas they want to share with me. And there is a continuous communication going around, I would say, in daily basis and completely outside the class hours. Of course, that's on my time, but it has its benefits. So the way now I'm going to go to the next slide, is that right now knowledge is just a click away, and the role as educators must change as well. So we are lucky today with the world's technology has improved so much, and we have these tools that we can use. But what we have to do is we have to up our game. So the challenge for the teachers is to transfer the skills online. So it's time for us to rethink the sector and transform the difficulty into an opportunity. That's how I feel about it. And all these are opportunities for educators to work more independently and learn to use tools and strategies that otherwise they might not have to before. So innovation, creativity, and resilience is required to make this work. Okay, so how do I work with my classes? Well, as everyone else, we have both methods, the synchronous and the asynchronous. So I started with the synchronous, and for example, the studio classes are more boxed classes. They're more box-driven classes because students already know the course of action and they know the end result. And with studio classes, you have a set of milestones, you have your projects, and there's a lot of reviews, which we do this through the Teams. Everybody hops into the loop, and we talk about this all the time, and we show reviews. Everybody sees the work, what everyone's doing pretty much. But when it comes to the mobile interaction class, which I'm giving this semester, as I mentioned before, it's another beast on its own, because the end result is the same, but the projects differ so much that it's impossible for everyone to follow the same kind of instructions. So I'm talking about students are doing, like, let's say, pet adoption apps, recipe apps, renting spaces app, music learning apps, museum apps, booking apps, you name it. I mean, it's a huge range of subjects. So students have to go through learning the reachability of phones, the repetition of phones, the alignments, the relations between objects inside a mobile phone, the laws of proximities, typography, sizes, colors, color combination, complementary colors. It goes on and on. So it's quite a challenge there. So the challenges that I see is how to motivate the students. Well, let me give you some examples. It's not the easiest thing because I don't know if you guys have experienced the same, but I have students that they fall off the grid for like days, weeks sometimes. It's like, what happened to you? They either get stuck on TV, they get stuck on playing games, they're sleeping late, and the next day they cannot wake up, so they cannot participate in the class. So how do you motivate these students? Then we have the problem that I see a lot is the research the students have to do. I cannot speak on anyone's behalf, but I can see the students from probably our faculty, their lack of research skills. Maybe because with their cell phones and our digital age, everything has become a headline. Like you scroll through and you scroll through, you barely read anything anymore. So that's how they treat things. So when I ask them to do research, guess what? They come up blank many times. So I'm like, guys, you have to do your research. And I keep repeating this again and again and again. And of course, it's not easy. So I think we have to also reach out for that a lot. Now, let's not forget we have a lot of students feel isolated. Well, they feel isolated to begin with in many ways in a normal daily life. So bring that with the current situation, there's a lot of feeling of isolation, and since there is no peer-to-peer or one-to-one physical conversation, that adds up a lot to the issue right now we have. So I feel that we have to, as academicians, we must build relationships with our students. If we build relationships, the students want this, they want internal motivation. And when they see someone that cares, then they will do their best to finish their homework and just communicating with you. And I see that happening. I mean, it works. It really does. It's just we have to put an extra effort to that. So, of course, let's not forget we have the internet connection, which, yes, in Istanbul, I don't think that we have issues overall, but I have students that they went to their own hometown. Forget that. It's quite a challenge to connect with them. Having all of that, having said all that, let's talk about what I do. Well, I show up. I show up all the time. There is no day in the week that I don't show up. I show up even Sundays. And I find it the only way I can deal with this, because there's need to be constant, the way I see it, evaluation. And the kids, the students crave for that. And it doesn't have to be like, 20 minutes review. When you keep this communication nonstop, the reviews are becoming, the time that you allocate per student is quite short, and which is a nice thing, of course. So I show up everywhere, and I see it works very well. The other thing that I do a lot is I custom record tutorials for the students. So for the mobile interaction class, I can see their problems when I do evaluations one-to-one. I take the project, I can see on my computer when they send me the original project, and I'm like, I go through everything, their steps, and I can see immediately where do they need help. And that's what I collect all these notes, and after the day is over, around, I would say, nighttime, I go back to the microphone and I start creating custom video tutorials just for this class. So that helps them tremendously. Another thing that I always do is, and I've been doing this for years, I do blended learning. Blended learning, I'm not sure if everybody knows that. It's the combination of in-class material with online material. So I combine this all the time. So what I do is I've created a lot of lectures on YouTube. I'm very active on YouTube. And I just send them there and I say, just do the tutorial and come back to me with all questions you have or whatever you might have. And we talk about that. So the tutorials are very targeted per lecture, per example, etc. And again, that's something that works very well. Something else that I found very helpful is when you give them instructions, you give them very clear instructions with bulleting emails and resources. I cannot stress this enough. How many resources I keep sending the student and share with them. Take a look at this, take a look at this. But I don't rely on that always, because they, guess what? They just don't do their own research in many times. So when I do peer-to-peer reviews, what I do is I say, here, look at this. Here, look at this one. Because they're not familiar, or maybe then they don't have the expertise how to search under specific meta tags or keywords. So there is that learning experience as well that I adopt with them, and it works. In the ballpark, it works. Of course, when there are some students that are not keen in any of these things, well, I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. The other thing that I found very, I would say, surprisingly beneficial is the exams. So I give them progress exams, and the exams only are time limited. They're time sensitive. So I would say probably 45 minutes, and it's on the clock. You don't deliver, that's it. You get your grade. There's no, hanky-panky. There's no, teacher, I was late. No. You got your, 1 minute or 2 minutes max, and that's it. You send it, you deliver, and we keep this, level up. And it really, really works. I've seen this working very nicely. They respond to that. The group spaces we have created through WhatsApp groups actually works very well. We take, especially in the studio class, we take a bunch of all the students and we talk to them many, many times. We share with them certain resources, and we tell them certain things, messages, basically messages, communication. So for me, as a communicator, is all about how can we make the students really feel comfortable in these new platforms. So these are, for example, some of my lectures that I've been sharing with them online, like this great class that I have. App design prototype. This is a complete way how to prototype an application, and you can test it inside your phone, and that's great. Students do that. Again, part of the class of the interaction design. This is the animation class, how to focus distance and learn how to create text animations, and it's just, you target this.
Elias, spent 15 minutes. So
okay, I'm done. Just
okay.
Last slide.
Sorry.
It's just this one, which basically all this gives us a great excuse, an opportunity to understand how to work remotely, making the most out of our digital tools, being productive, and you know what, become great communicators. And that's all I want to talk about. Thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. I'll just quickly wrap up everything. Fantastic presentation. We were doing like from practical use of practical tools to different kind of topics to kind of more theories behind these things, and then we have a more reflective presentation about online teaching by Elias and Malgo. So I open the floor for anyone who has questions. There are some detailed questions about Alessandra, about work on teams in your method, and there are other also technical questions. I don't know if
during the seminar I took note of the questions, so maybe I could just ask the questions to each of the lectures, and then maybe we can have other questions.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, so there was a question for Lamberto Amistadi from Barham Ali. Are you here, Professor Lamberto? Or
okay, I have to open the microphone. Yeah.
Okay, so the question was from Barham Ali. He was saying, what I heard from presenters are all about class management for e-learning, which is the course will be conducted between students and teachers. But here in Iraq, we need the third party to follow up the process and to ensure from the process of education. Is there any platform to do such a thing?
We will use, we will prepare the course on the Moodle platform. So we are in the Moodle environment. In the Moodle environment, you can interact not too much with the students, because it is just an interaction into composing for example, some resources. You can do some resources together with the students, but I don't know, the platform is the Moodle platform.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. The other question is for Professor Camiz, and it's from Luna. Alessandro's presentation is excellent. My question is, any tips or advice for managing students with working in teams? You're muted, Professor.
Tips and advices for managing students in teams. So tip number one is that in teams, they're pushing you to use notes. OneNote, sorry, that's the name of the application. Don't do it. It's you know, it's confusing. It doesn't work very well. It's very clumsy interface. Tip number two is that in teams, in the meeting, you know, in the meeting space, you got something which is called the Microsoft Whiteboard, which is pretty good. But the version you get there is very much limited. So you can download the same whiteboard from the Microsoft Store on Windows, and also from the Apple Store for iOS. And it's much more, you know, has many more functions than the one you get inside there. And I would say Teams is pretty good, you know, for video conferencing. Works pretty well. That part is okay. It's quite stable. So that's it. Probably, I mean, if you just do it for video conferencing, it's good. If you want to do more with it, it's okay, but you know, not that much.
Can I have a question that kind of intersects all of this? I mean, Giorgio has talked about this a bit, and that's about technical requirements, and also Elias about bandwidth. But for example, when you have a big, Lamberto, when you have a big, back home, I mean, can everyone, I mean, would that come with your architecture education? So you get a big screen, or for example, so how do you think that people should solve this across the universities and across the disciplines? So is it problematic? So just a quick question on the technical
because it's too big. Yeah, but the 32-inch Wacom is just in the room of the workshop. It's not portable. Yeah, but there are other models of the Wacom very small, 13-inch. Yeah, you can have different size of these electronic tables, but the Wacom is very nice because the pen of the Wacom can maintain the sensibility of the hand and the inclination of the pen. It is very well for design.
Yeah. Thank you.
So maybe we could switch to the next question. This is for Professor Camiz as well, from Zuhal Ulusoy. She says, this presentation is really amazing. Can we have another look of the list of platforms, programs used in combination? Actually have the presentation for a closer look study, she says. Professor Camiz?
Sorry. So we have published already those, tests we did on the different tools. So I'm going to link in the chat in a few seconds the website we have established on Teaching Online with some of those tests and more to come. And okay. So there was one other part of it.
She just wants to see the list of the platforms and programs used in combination and have the presentation for a closer look. But
yes, and then we're going to share the video on the DRUM laboratory website. So that is also something you have in the invitation as well, the link of our laboratory. So that is going to be shared there, the video, and eventually if we can share the PDF of the presentations, I would have to ask all the lecturers to send us the PDF of their presentation. So maybe a low resolution presentation because we cannot, I'll put hundreds of megabytes over there. But yes, so we're going to be sharing the video, we're going to be sharing all the other information, and I'm going to link here the published lists of those tools. Yes.
From Teeling C, asking, how good is the pen control, speed and accuracy to you, Professor Camiz?
So I think it's pretty good. It's not as good as the real pencil, but it is pretty good. I mean, it's even a different art. How can I say? It's a different tool of artistic expression. So it has its own, modes of. So once you get used to it, you can do certain things that you cannot do with a normal pencil, I would say. So it's just, it's a slow pencil. Let's call it like this, but not very slow.
Okay, thank you.
The next question is for Frederick Beal. Professor Beal, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so this one's from Luna. She's actually repeating the question she asked to Professor Camiz. She says, I reiterate my question to Alessandro about managing students working in teams. So the question was, any tips, advice for managing students working in teams?
Well, I was actually showing a course that when given in Rome was an on-site course and would have involved walking excursions through the city, stopping, commenting, recording, documenting while doing that. In the moving of the course online, we changed the format slightly, which into what we call at Pratt a lecture lab course. And a lecture lab course is generally where you gather together a larger group of students, and then there is a lecture, and then it breaks out into the different smaller sections for the lab. And so the way that we revised this was to, I was able to put together the quote lecture, and the lectures were the walks, and you saw an example of that. And the individual faculty in their labs, what they did was they focused on assigning different episodes along the walk to various students. And then they gathered together as a group, and then the different students shared with each other the particular episode that they had researched. And so that by the end of that class, there was a much more comprehensive understanding of that excursion that came both from the original presentation, but then also these kind of sort of incremental moments along that route that formed the synthesis of understanding, and it allowed all of the different students to really share their particular perspective that came about through that engagement. And I think that was pretty effective. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have here an extra? While you read the questions, I can have a smart question.
Actually, the questions are over.
Okay, great. Then I'm going to ask, and this kind of very much relates to Luca, but also to everyone, and to Fred's kind of Google Earth, and that is the question of digital twins. Because what we are seeking now is to kind of go into the digital twins of our cities, which can be Google Earth, can be kind of an ideal representation of a building, a digital building where you can measure and work with it. And the question of professional software, GIS, BIM, that could kind of help. So anyone wants to comment on this about how the things, now we can find out some problems that, you know, the digital reality, we can see how much it corresponds to the physical reality. So anyone has comments on this, and how can we maybe create better digital, or they're sufficient, or this kind of how they fit the practice, for example, architecture. For example, we had, Giorgio spoke of Dassault, who kind of design airplanes, and where they don't do architecture. Whereas, so anyone, Luca, maybe you can start with architecture and how this, how the digitalization, what are the needs that this kind of
yes,
online teaching needs?
Thank you for the question, TODOR. Well, actually, we are improving a lot our teaching by digitization techniques. I have to say that probably for our area of teaching and research, so survey of architecture, the improvement recently were very big, were huge. We have to think that we are dealing with this technology at the first year, and then the second year in another course of advanced survey. We really use digital tools, for example, photogrammetry tools, for making the students more familiar with 3D technologies and 3D representation. The problem for us is that very few tools are precise enough for architectural documentation. I see that for urban studies, many tools are affordable enough, and also precise enough for us that even 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters can make the difference between a good survey and bad survey. Some tools are not enough in terms of precision. But yes, I agree that the future is dealing with digitization of cultural heritage, also to preserve the memory of our heritage. We are losing heritage day after day, day by day, for a fire, for an earthquake. We have a terrible earthquake in Ferrara 6 years ago, and we have lost a lot of heritage. So yes, digitization could be the right way to go ahead.
I want to like to contribute a little bit to that question, if I understood your question correctly, because I wrote something quite a number of years ago, which again was based on the program that we run in Rome, and it was called Architecture and its Double. And the double was the representation of architecture. So, you know, students, the education of an architect is about teaching students to represent what ultimately is reality. And that there has always been a difficulty. You know, there's a trajectory through any education that begins abstractly and it begins to sort of accumulate certain knowledge. But along the route, along the way, there are moments when students recognize things in real life that they have been trying to represent through their drawings, whatever the vehicle of drawing is. And when I wrote this, we weren't even using computers. So this goes way back. But the thinking is exactly the same. There's this operation that's parallel to reality that's trying to represent reality. And the education is complete when somehow those two things come together. When a student can make a line and understand precisely what that line is in the real world. So what we're doing right now, there's a great irony to that. Because we're effectively removing the kind of critical, or we're stepping away from the kind of the critical aspect of that, which is the reality, or we're trying to redefine reality, like the notion of sort of reconstituting the study of the urban environment into one's living room or bedroom as a way to continue with the processes that have been used before. And so that's another kind of removal, I think, right? So it ends up being a big question for me as to what this really means, both for the future but going forward, right? You know, how we remain within this kind of virtual simulated world as opposed to sort of the rapid return to what we once had before.
That's a very good, yes, very, very good, Alessandro.
Sorry, TODOR, just a few words. I would like to ask Professor Balzani if he is back here again and he would like to say something. And then welcome Pierre Gauthier, University of Concordia, Quebec, and Roberta Spallone, Polytechnic of Torino, and also if they would like to say something.
Yeah, I'm Pierre Gauthier. So thank you, Alessandro. I missed the beginning of the presentation. I had 2 Zoom meetings. I wonder, you know, I mean, this is what I got, you know, was very interesting. Maybe it was addressed before, but I was wondering how we could mobilize the tools, you know, for urban morphology to inform, you know, like the teaching, the analysis, and so on. Because, of course, you know, what is missed right now is the ability to go with students and visit, you know, the environment, the real environment, which is absolutely essential. But, you know, historically, there's been a tension, so to speak, in architecture where it's about, you know, like the experience, you know, like overvaluing perhaps, you know, like the experimental, you know, exercise, you know, being in space. But urban morphology, you know, like develop analytical tools that allows us to unveil, you know, like relationships, spatial relationships that are not necessarily visible. Often they're not visible, you know, like to the eye. So this exercise, you know, I wonder if any of you have, you know, experience or thoughts, you know, like in their teaching about how we can mobilize those analytical tools, if you wish, in conjunction with the, you know, geospatial technologies and visualization tools such as Google Earth and so on. So that you can, because that's another way to experience the space, so to speak, you know, like it's more abstract, but it's equally relevant, you know, and sometimes it gives access to an aspect of reality that is not readily accessible just by visiting the place and trying to absorb, you know, what's there. I don't know if I was clear, but so there are the technical aspects, but there are also the analytical tools and that are available to us in particular as morphologists.
Roberta, are you there? Marcello, are you there? No, they're not there. What about Murat? Are you there? Microphone, the microphone. You have to unmute yourself, Argo.
Okay, thanks to this meeting, we are linked to the real life and lovely people. Thanks a lot, really. I enjoyed very much. You know, I'm looking for the next one. You know, the next part of the series. Let's make it.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
You know, it is one more thing. Architecture, as Francis Ching states, is a tactile experience. We saw many. I mean, we saw some students are experiencing the chilly water during the summertime, and then you know there are many things. How can we manage in the future, and then combine or hybridize? Maybe this is going to give us a chance to think of or advance our techniques, to think on design and then representation. I guess, you know, it is worth it to think of it. We couldn't, I mean, I can talk on my behalf. I wouldn't have bothered to learn so many things I learned this period. You know, I don't know, it's a period of learning and making progress. And then, you know, I learned a lot. And then I'm hoping to this period is going to contribute to develop our tools and techniques, I guess. Thanks a lot for all contributions.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I should wrap it and stop recording probably, because
yes,
and you know, one of the things is that I think this lasts too long. I think you should keep to a 2-hour format maximum, because I mean 3.5 hours. You know, my daughter here, she is getting. So I'll stop recording now, so then we can go for informal. Okay.
There was another question on the chat box.
Another question, okay.
Yeah, just one last one. So
very last one, okay.
Okay, Jacob Fransuk said, thank you all for presentations. They were very valuable. Maybe I missed something, but I would like to ask an open question to everyone. How do you deal with the final project exhibitions?
I answered on the chat, thank you. We have an exhibition committee of students that are working on this. I mean, this is my studio. So in my studio, I asked my students, you want to form a committee and, you know, deal with the issue of the final exhibition of your projects, and some of them joined. We got 6 of them. And so we have group there and they're working, and, you know, so we will see. We're going to be doing a virtual exhibition in the first phase, and maybe inshallah later we're going to go in Galata, in Calais, and have the exhibition as it was planned before. Roberta, are you there? Can you say something? You have to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. There you go.
Very, very nice, very interesting, very wide interests of the speakers. So I learned so much to this conference.
Okay, thank you very much. TODOR, now you can wrap it up and close. Don't leave it open. Just
I'll just stop recording. So I'm gonna upload. I'm gonna send to Alessandro after this, and you can download this thing. So I'm stopping. Cut from here.